I love to eat. I have got a huge sweet tooth. I will try almost anything at least once. I love the experience of going out to eat at restaurants, cooking with friends. Okay, well, maybe not cooking so much, but I do love breaking bread with friends and just talking to them over a really good meal. I mean, I will save the cooking to somebody else, but that's just me. Today, however, my very special guest is no stranger to the kitchen, and he's cooking up a conversation around mental health. Chris Mendonca was a head chef in Boston for years. Now he's the executive sous chef at Crossbar in Havertown, Pennsylvania. And guess what? He is also a former contestant on the Hell's Kitchen. That's right, Gordan Ramsay's Hell's Kitchen. You know the one. Now he is using his recognition from the show and his talents in the kitchen to share his experience with mental health in order to help others on their own healing journeys. Welcome to Drawn, the podcast that draws you in with stories of hope, healing, and even a little hustle while battling anxiety and depression. Think you have to wait until you've conquered your mental illness to start living a joyful, meaningful life? Think again. Conquering your mental illness is part of living the life you love, and we're going to figure it out together. I'm Katie Rochetko, and this is Drawn. Chris, thank you so much for hanging out with me on the Drawn podcast.
Katie, thank you so much for having me on this. I'm super stoked about this. Thank you.
Oh, this is going to be so much fun. I'm going to be honest a little bit. I spent part of my morning watching Hell's Kitchen.
Oh, God.
Because I'd never seen that show before, and I needed to know what I was getting myself into when I talked to you about this show, and then, of course, your mental health experience. And by golly, just the first episode was intense.
Oh, my God. The first episode was something, you never expect when you meet somebody like Gordan Ramsay what's going to come out of it. And it started off that it was just like boom, 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 here we are, just hit the ground running. And, on top of the intimidation factor, you're cooking with a bunch of other very talented chefs, so yeah. It was something.
It was definitely something. So I really want to start there because obviously I know that you are a very talented chef, very notable even before Hell's Kitchen. But really, Hell's Kitchen is in a lot of ways that I believe kind of started your mental health journey and kind of the experiences that you had on that show. So I'd love to just hear from you. What exactly was that experience like being on Hell's Kitchen?
First and foremost, being on Hell's Kitchen and a contestant on there is an honor that is unimaginable. It's something that, a lot of people can't say that they've done in their lives, and it's something that super grateful for the experience, super appreciative of all the friendships that I gathered throughout the episodes, and years later, we have still been consistent friends. So I'm super blessed about the opportunity for sure. And yeah, like you said, it's scary. You're on live TV. You're 18, million people are viewing you from all across the world. And, that in itself is like, oh, God. Like, your face is being shown to so many different television screens, And, it's intimidating. And it puts a lot of stress on the shoulders because you don't know what you're getting yourself into. And you don't know the trials and tribulations that are about to be handed to you.
Yeah, and not only that, but I mean, you had a unique season in that you were season 18 and you were the first season to have this rookies versus veterans. So it wasn't just a bunch of nobodies from the show, coming on the show for the first time. You were cooking against people who had been through Hell's Kitchen before.
Oh yeah, so they already knew the game. They knew exactly what they were getting themselves into. So, they definitely had a better situation of being mentally prepped up for it, So they did have an upper hand on us, but that didn't directly change the dynamic of what we were doing because again, you never know what's going to happen on the show. You just don't know. It's very unexpected. The tension, the stress, the competitive attitudes, all of it just goes into one big ball. And again, the word I have for it is it's pretty intimidating.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely sounds like it. I think that's one of the reasons why people watch and love the show so much is because they are intrigued by the fact that there are, all of these adults together willingly putting themselves in that kind of pressure under the wrath of Gordan Ramsay. I mean, is he as terrifying as the show makes him out to be?
No. Chef Ramsay, the only intimidating thing about him is that he's like 6'1", and that's only intimidating for me because I'm only 5'8". So, so I'm looking at this mountain of a man, and I'm like, oh, God, like, you are very tall. So yeah. I think that's the one of the most intimidating things. But as a chef, we've have experienced, chefs that can have an ego, that can be just flat out just really rude and mean for no reason. But with Ramsay being, the stature that he is, he knows what he's doing, and he has a rhyme and reason to every step. It's very methodical, and he wants everybody to succeed. He does not want anybody failing. He wants each and every one of us to succeed.
Wow. So how many weeks did you last on the show?
Yeah, it was about 3.5 weeks, I believe.
Okay, so about 6 episodes in.
Yeah, about 6 episodes in. It might have been just a little less, but what happens is that the process leading up to even getting on the show itself, they fly you out to wherever they're filming it. We were filming it in Los Angeles, and they confiscate everything from you. You have no contact with the outside world. They take away your phone. They take away your laptops. They take away everything. And so while you're on set, you have you don't know what's happening outside those 4 walls. Which is, in that itself, it's also super stressful because, some of the people that were on the show had kids, and they were, being married and being away from them, or some of their parents were sick, and we all sacrificed a little bit of something to be on the show for sure.
Wow, that is a really intense environment where you are eating, breathing, sleeping, just living the kitchen.
Yes, it is. We get woken up at like 5 o'clock in the morning. We have to get dressed. We all have to share a bathroom. We all have to and I was in a room with 3 girls sleeping. And so let me tell you, it was so hard for me to get myself ready because I had to wait for them to get themselves ready. And we know sometimes, females like to be a little dolled up. So here I am waiting outside the door and being like, 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm just like, I just want to put my uniform on. I just want to brush my teeth. And let's just get this day started. So that was interesting for sure.
Okay.
The only guy.
I can imagine. That does definitely sound very intriguing, very different than what I think people would think about. We see what they put on TV, which is basically all of your time in the kitchen. But there's a lot more going on behind the scenes that can also take a toll on your mental health.
Yeah, like I said, it's being away from anybody that you, like a significant other, a family member, or whatever the situation be, and not being able to converse with them, especially if you have, a bad service, or if you just got screamed at for 30 minutes by Gordan Ramsay, and, you kind of have to rely on yourself to get yourself out of a funk. And like I said, we all can, manage ourselves, but we have partners and we have, significant others because that's our bond, right? When we have a bad day, we know that we can talk to this person and that they're going to make it better for us, So going from that to that, it was just it was a little challenging. I would have loved to call my lady at the time and been like, oh my God, what a service, and just kind of talk it out.
Yeah.
Because when you have to try to figure things out in your head, especially with, mental health being a disease, and you're trying to, compromise certain things on your day-to-days, and what are you allowing to get to you? What are you allowing to step inside your mind? And the hardest part is not letting it consume you. So people with mental health, it's super important to be able to talk about it and express it, because the more that it stays bottled up, the worse it gets. And that's the unfortunate part about this disease. And, it's a very, very, very real thing.
Right. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are one of the few contestants who have ever actually quit the show, right?
Yeah,
in the whole history of the show.
Yeah, so the last season that just aired, there's actually a couple of people that left on their own accord. And when I noticed that, I was like, I messaged each one of them, and I was like, you guys did awesome. I'm here for you. I reach out to a lot of health kitchen chefs about mental health anyways. But I started seeing, like, you know, when people pull themselves out, like, I think people are starting to understand that, you know, it's not just Hell's Kitchen, it's being a chef in itself that is one of the most strenuous. Like, you have to be vigilant, but it's an aggressive career. It's an aggressive career mentally, physically, emotionally. You know, there's a lot of moving parts that go into the career paths that we chose.
So what exactly was like the breaking point for you on the show?
So I was definitely missing my kitchen back home. So at that time, I was one of the youngest contestants on our season. And I was 24, 25 and a half at that time. And I was running 2 major restaurants in Boston. And, you know, so I was always consistently worrying about what was happening with that. And then competing, as I got on the show, I knew what the show entailed of it being a competition. But, like, as a chef, I don't like competing in food, because food is supposed to be the uniting of, you know, breaking the bread at the table, having a conversation with your family members and loved ones. And food is meant to be so much more. And again, I understood what I was getting myself into, but I didn't understand the magnitude of it. And like I said, I don't cook to compete. I cook because I love it. I love food so much, and I have so much passion about it. And, you know, it's something that, like, when I started going through the episodes, I was like, this is not what food is to me. This isn't food. You know, this is just like a bunch of, like, you know, angry chefs, or like it's about a bunch of hungry chefs that are wanting to get that grand prize of $250,000 in the acclimate of being Gordan Ramsay's head chef in Las Vegas. You know, but to me, food is not to be like a competitive. It's supposed to be a unity.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Thank you.
And I love food too. So next time I'm in Boston, I'm coming up and eating in one of your restaurants.
Absolutely. I would be honored for that.
So kind of following up with, like, your decision to leave, you know, it's kind of a shocking turning point in the show and stuff. I mean, after you left the show, what kind of happened? What did you do next, and how did you continue investigating your own mental health journey?
I had a lot of help from surrounding chefs. You know, I try to keep my circle very close with like-minded chefs like myself. And again, it was very, very hard to still maintain it, because then after the show, then a regret comes in. And you're like, oh, Chris, why couldn't you just last like another couple episodes? Why couldn't you just, like, you know, just like bully through yourself and just kind of do that? But, you know, it was a regret for a little bit in that regards. But then, you know, as I started progressing more and more as a chef, and I started getting better opportunities, I realized that that was the best decision I could have ever possibly made. And, you know, like I said, it's definitely been a struggling still. Like, again, this disease will never leave me. Will never leave me until the day I die. And, you know, something that actually, like, really, really started, I think, more of my mental health is prior to the show, about 4 years prior to that, I got into an accident, and I broke 90% of my face. And I broke my jaw, my nose, both sides of my jaw. I had 111 orbital fractures in my eye sockets, and I almost lost my taste for a year.
What?
So as a chef and not being able to taste your food, like, that was it was something I cannot even explain. And I lost some memory, and you know, and then when I came back from the show, even still, like, there was recipes that I've created, and I remember one time my sous chef was like, "Chef," he's like, that doesn't go in it. I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely it does." He's like, "No, chef." He's like, "It doesn't." I'm like, "What?" And so I pull up, like, my recipe book, and I was like, "Oh my God." I was like, "You are 1,000% correct."
Wow.
And it's something I've made 1,000 times, you know. It wasn't something that was new.
Wow.
And, you know, like I said, after the show, it was kind of like PTSD a little bit, just being on there and, you know, trying to figure out, like, my next path. And, you know, I was very quiet after the show. I really didn't promote myself as a Hell's Kitchen chef, because I was kind of embarrassed that I did make that move. So I was kind of, like, underground. And, I've done a couple of dinners with some other Hell's Kitchen chefs. And, again, I talk to a lot of them at least once or twice a month. I show my love to them, my support. But I'm one of the only chefs that really just kind of took a back burner after the show and didn't pursue anything too much farther with that. Like, it wasn't something that, like, I was like, oh, yeah. And then as I started, getting more involved with more private dinners and catering and stuff like that, then I was proud to showcase, because I realized that was a platform. Like, just because I left and just because, I was embarrassed and all this stuff. But I started to realize that being a celebrity chef on a really fantastic show, it was a platform of mental health. And I could utilize that. And I spread my story to a lot of people on social media and stuff like that, and really touched a lot of people. And when I got off the show, I kid you not, every day I would get hundreds and hundreds of messages on Facebook, hundreds and hundreds of messages on Instagram, and I still get them to this day, almost 3 years later after it's been aired.
Wow.
Yeah, the support of love is truly amazing, and you don't realize how many people actually share the same disease as you until you hear their stories. And I've heard so many people's stories of mental health and, what they're going through, and that they just, and that they're chefs. And the reason why they keep going through is because they heard my story and it motivates them to do better. And I have people check up on me every day from, again, all around the world.
That is amazing. That is so
Yes.
cool. Oh, I love
Right?
that. Because, mental health, especially, and I don't know what kind of mental health you deal with specifically. Feel free to share if you'd like. But for me, yeah, depression and anxiety are the two devils that I wear on either side of my shoulders. And there is something so lonely about being diagnosed with anxiety and depression, or even before you're diagnosed with those two things, that it just makes you feel like you're the only person in the world who's gone through that. But as soon as you start speaking about it, as soon as you acknowledge that you have it, you start telling a few people, and then you start telling a few more people, and then you realize that your platform, whether it's, the moms on Instagram or your friends on Facebook, you suddenly do realize that you are building a community around people who have gone through something similar to you, who resonate with your story because they're also in the closet about the depression and anxiety that they're facing, and now suddenly they're feeling confident to speak up because you spoke up. So I've definitely experienced that sense of community just from talking about having a mental health issue.
I call the conversation like a domino. Once you start it, it's just going to go all the way around, and and it's something that needs to be started. People need to be aware of this disease a little bit more, because before, as a chef, right? Sometimes when you work with certain chefs, I carry a lot of emotions as a chef, so I'm considered happy chef, right? Because I don't really get mad in my kitchen. I don't really do anything. When we're in service, we all have a pump that we do, but I've been known as the happy chef almost as long as I can remember. They're like, you're one of the happiest people we've ever met. What do you do for a career? I'm like, I'm a chef. They're like, get out of here. What do you mean you're a chef? Chefs are supposed to be angry. They're supposed to be mean. They're supposed to be this way. And I'm like, I don't got that.
Yeah, that's just not me.
It's not me. I'm happy. Happy. But the happiness sometimes is a mask to wear. Because you have to put on a happy face sometimes. And that's the unfortunate part, is that sometimes you do have to put that on to kind of trick yourself. And I know that sounds so sad to say, but sometimes you have to kind of subconsciously think that something's going to be better, even though you think everything's going against it. And you kind of have to, find this this balance of, all right, Chris, can you just put a smile on today? You don't know whose day is going to be bad today. You don't know that. And then if your day is bad and their day is bad, then everybody's day is bad. And so as a leader into the kitchen, I do have to put a smile on my face sometimes while hiding, what's going on behind closed doors. I try not to do that too often, because then that becomes the scary spot, because then you don't actually know what's real.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to, figure that out. But, even just on a day-to-day basis, my lady, she's in Augusta, Georgia, right? She's doing something. I really can't go into details about it, but but she goes away for 2 months. So she's gone for 8 weeks, and this is the second time that she's been gone. And so I just moved to Philadelphia in September. So this is a very new territory for me. It's kind of intimidating. And again, when you don't know anybody and you're so far away from home, like I have a 2.5-year-old daughter that actually she's gonna be 3 June 26. That's in Boston. And I'm doing all this for her, and I'm trying to find like that structure and the stability. But it's super scary when you're doing it by yourself, and you have to put yourself into an environment that you're unfamiliar with and try to make your way. And there's a lot of demons that come with that because you just feel so alone,
Absolutely. I know we use the phrase, fake it till you make it, but sometimes you're faking it so much to the point that it breaks you. And that's where I think it's important to go back to kind of what you said early on about how important it is to have that support system and how you were used to having that support system that was kind of cut off during your time on the show. But, being back kind of out in the real world, having that support system, knowing who it is that you can confide in, in your more intimate feelings and stuff. Like there are, like you said, some people that don't need to hear everything that's going on. There are people who need to look to you and see that everything's okay because, they're following you. They're the other chefs in your kitchen and stuff like that. But, being able to confide in the people closest to you is sometimes the hardest, but it's also the most important thing that you can do when you're on a mental health journey.
I agree with that, and sometimes with our disease, it's hard to explain it or put into words. And the only way that people understand it is emotions or reactions. And sometimes those reactions are not the best reactions because you don't know how to express them. You don't know the words to really put down. And all you know is that what you're feeling. And sometimes again, like I'm not gonna lie, there's been times where like I've taken out, and it's never intentional, it's not something that I would ever be like, today this is my goal, but sometimes I take out things that I can't explain to close ones, and I take them out on loved ones, and again, it's super unintentional, but it's sometimes the only way I know how to express something. Doesn't mean it's right, but it's the only way that I know that some part of my mental health is going to be released is by a reaction.
Yeah.
And, because sometimes you just don't know how to release, this emotion, this feeling, this raw thing that you just can't get rid of. And that's the worst part, knowing that you can never get rid of it and you have to have it every single day without a choice. Like, that's a scary thing.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for your honesty. I think it's something that we can all relate to, taking out our unresolved feelings or our anger out on the people that we love the most. It's something that happens to me more times than I'd like to admit. My husband, God bless him for putting up with me. But, at the same time, I think in kind of speaking also, speaking to the caregivers of people with mental health, it's that, a lot of the times when we do have those kind of lashing out moments, it's just a cry for help. I think a lot of times, like you said, we don't have the words to be able to communicate exactly what we're feeling. And so we're trying to communicate something, in an unhealthy way, because that's just a gut reaction or an instinct that we go to. But all it is really a cry for help that says, hey, I'm hurting right now, and I need you to come alongside me and help me through this.
And I could not have said it better myself. It's something that, like not everybody's going to get it. Not everybody's going to get it. And, it's not meant for everybody to get. It's for people to understand and maybe can, like, see a different point of something. But not every person, that's something that I think I can speak personally for myself, that sometimes that's a little selfish for me to think that people are going to understand it instead of get it. And, then that's when I'm just like, how do you not understand? Like, this is what happens in somebody's head. But not everybody has this disease. Not everybody goes through these kind of things on a daily basis. It's when you have just something small happen in your day can just ruin the rest of your day. And it's like, why? Like, why is this happening to me? And, somebody can have something small happen to them and they just move on. And there's no dwelling and they can, like, figure it out. But, with this disease, it's very hard to figure it out. And you try rushing to figure it out, and you try and then that's when the anxiety comes in, because you're like, why can't I figure this out? And then you get stressed about that. Like I said, it's a domino effect. It really is.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And like you said, I mean, there's stigmas in every industry out there, but then also I think how we're raised greatly affects our mental health too. And I know that you're Portuguese and that you're from Boston. So I feel like that's the very definition of like thick accent, thick skin. So I have a
Yeah.
feeling that mental health probably wasn't something that you were raised in, right? Raised talking about.
No, we were not raised to talk about it. And, as an adult now that it's like pretty much out there, like, I've been able to talk with my brother about it. He goes through something similar. My dad, he eventually opened up to me about his own things that he's been through, growing up and stuff like that. My mom, the same exact way. My mom, she is a recovered drug addict and one of the most inspiring people you ever meet.
Oh, wow.
And she turned her whole life around for her kids.
Wow.
And, she was kind of put in the corner of making these choices and decisions. And, she kind of woke up. And, so, like, mental health kind of runs in, like, the family. But we didn't talk about it. We never talked about it until I became a little bit more older and probably a little bit more mature to actually be able to relate to them and understand it better. Instead of being like, well, you think you have it? Well, guess what? I have it too. No, then it was able to be a conversation in a mature way of, hey, I can relate to this.
Wow. So I guess growing up, what were some of the things that you heard, whether it was from your parents or from just like, your community when it came to dealing with your feelings and your emotions, especially what I think a lot of people think of as like negative emotions, sadness, fear, anxiety, things like that?
Well, I think because it really wasn't just talked about, like our emotions and stuff like that happened. My father's a very, very thick-skinned man, very Portuguese. So, I said, it really wasn't talked about. So when we had emotions, we kind of just kept them to ourselves when we were younger. Or we would outlash as young kids would. And, as I grew up, I realized that the lashing out was the start of it. And that's how I knew something was wrong inside my head. And I think that my parents saw it, but they never really like brought it up too much. We went to some counselors, my brother and myself, when we were younger. Didn't really seem to help at all. It's not that I don't suggest therapy, because it does wonders for so many different people, and it's an amazing thing. And it's something I've definitely been entertaining as an adult now. But as a kid, we're going to see this lady and talk about it. We're like, we don't even talk about it with our parents. What makes you think we're going to talk about it with you? You're a random person. Like, you're not going to do anything for me. So, like, therapy really didn't do anything for us when we were younger. And, I've been on my own since I was 16 years old. So it's been, like, just a crazy, crazy, crazy journey since I was 16. And I had to figure out a lot of things by myself. I had to figure out what the world actually was. I had to learn how to, just do what adults do when they were taught by their parents. I wasn't, like, really guided in that way. So, life came a little bit harder.
Wow. That's incredible. I can't imagine being on my own at 16. Like, when I think of 16-year-old Katie, like, she would have died on the streets, hands down. She had no street smarts about her. She would have not known what to do at all. So I commend your ability to go from being that 16-year-old out on your own to where you are now. That is an incredible journey.
Yeah, let me tell you, I got a lot of scars and reminders of this journey. And,
yeah.
So many different paths and so many people, for a while I was just couch surfing or, wouldn't tell anybody and sleep under the bridge and then, take a shower at the YMCA and then go to school, things like that. And I wouldn't change it for the world.
Wow.
I wouldn't change it for the world because it led me exactly where I'm supposed to be.
So when did cooking kind of become a thing that developed into, an interest to a passion to a career?
Oh, this is a funny story. So I thought I was going to be a famous musician. I was like, yeah, like I play guitar, I could play drums, I could play clarinet, I could do this. I was like, I'm going to be a famous musician. And I was like, well, I need money to do this. So I started working at Dunkin' Donuts.
The
in
culinary
Goffstown.
classic.
Yeah, right? Let me tell you. So every day for 8 months, a local chef used to come and grab his coffee because there's a Four Diamond restaurant down the street. So him and his girlfriend, now wife, used to come in. They used to bring the dog Moxie. I get Moxie, a donut, and I would say, "Welcome to Double D's. What can I get for you?" Kind of play on words and stuff like that. And I was always humorous on the headset, and I always was super interactive with the guests. Just because it's an experience. No matter if it's Dunkin' Donuts, an Applebee's, whatever, it's a guest. We're giving them something, and they should experience that. So he used to come in every day. We'd have quick 15-second conversations, 30-second conversations. And then one day he's like, "Chris, I really would love somebody like you inside my kitchen." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." He's like, "What, really?" I'm like, "Yeah, why not?" He's like, "But do you know how to cook?" I was like, "I do not." I was like, "But I can make mean ramen noodles and macaroni and cheese." And he's like, "All right, let's go. And this restaurant, even till this day, is still one of the most badass restaurants in the state.
Wow.
And they're amazing. So I worked Dunkin' Donuts and this restaurant.
So you wait. Let's pause for a second. You went from Dunkin' Donuts to working in a 4-star restaurant?
Yeah. And like I said, a split of a second. I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." So I was working the restaurant and Dunkin' Donuts for about a month together, because I wanted to see what the dynamic was going to be for me, and I wanted to make money because I loved working at that time. Now I'm 55 hours, 60-hour week. I'm just oh, this is pushing it now. But when I was younger, I was working 3 jobs, and I was really pushing myself to get a car, get my own apartment, all these different things I wanted to achieve for myself. So there was one service at the restaurant, my chef, Benjamin Nack. He was actually a season 7 Hell's Kitchen. So this was back in 2012 when I first started. And we had a service, and he's like, he told me not to cut something. It was cranberry cream cheese sandwiches that we used to put on this Waldorf salad. And he liked, them to be cut to order. And so I go out to the front desk and I asked the host, I was like, "Hey, so what's our covers looking like tonight? Do we got a lot of people?" They're like, "Oh, we got a lot of people." And I was like, "I'm not cutting these sandwiches to order. You're crazy." So I started cutting them in half and putting them in the fish tub. So chef does a line check, goes through. He's like, "Chris," he's like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Chef." He's like, No. He used some choice words of swearing that I will not say out loud. And he took my fish tub of a full sandwich. It must have been at least 80, 90 orders of these sandwiches. And he just dumps them out on the floor and starts stepping on it. So condescending. He's crushing grapes. And I was like, oh, my mouth dropped. I was like, "Oh my God." He's like, "Go downstairs to pastry, start making these sandwiches over." And I was like, "Chef, I don't know how to make these. I'm on pastry." He's like, "I don't care." He's like, "You're going to learn." So I went down. That day, I put my notice in for Dunkin' Donuts. I put my 2 weeks notice in, and I was like, "I want to work here."
Stop it. That would send me running out the door.
Nope. I was like, challenge accepted. Put my notice in Dunkin' Donuts, and I was like, and then I started up.
Shut up. That is hilarious, Chris. So did you ever learn how to make these pastries?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It was one of I put it on a couple of my menus as I started to become executive chef. I was like, this is my little homage for Chef Knack over here.
Wow. And so have you just been cooking ever since?
Yes, I've been cooking ever since. I took a 2-month break from cooking because I was starting to see myself kind of getting to a point of getting burnt out. And because I love this industry so much, I could not allow myself to do that. So I took a 2-month hiatus, and I did some work with my stepfather doing some. And me, I'm all about learning new trades. How to hang sheetrock, how to do electrical, how to do plumbing. So I did a lot of that stuff with him. I think it's very knowledgeable stuff to have in your back pocket. So I took a 2.5 month break from cooking, and I worked with him, learned some new skills, learned how to do certain things. And then I got an opportunity from Chef T, who is a Virginia native chef over at the Black Hen in Christiansburg, I think it is.
Yep.
So Chef T reached out to me, and I was like, oh, what? I was like, this is crazy. I really haven't talked to T. She's like, I have an opportunity for you. And I was like, sign me up. And then we started, like, going through, like, these motions. She drove from Virginia all the way to Florida to come have a meeting with me. And we went to Buffalo Wild Wings. she gave me, like, this little plan, this little idea. And unfortunately, it just didn't work out on the certain timing. But I got to do incredible dinners with her. You know, I got to meet Carrie,
yep,
who we all know and love so much. An amazing human being. I think we can agree to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, my God. You know, so because of cooking, I've been able to just meet. And, you know, that's kind of what keeps my sanity, is the people that I get to experience and meet throughout this journey. Is something that I would have never done. I would have never done, and I don't know where cooking would have brought. And, you know, I thank Chef T an immense amount for just extending her hand for a quick second and be like, hey, you have a lot of potential, and I want to see you thrive in this. And that was, like, the first time, like, I'm doing dinners with the Hell's Kitchen chef, and I'm getting back in my rhythm, and then other Hell's Kitchen chefs want to plan dinners, and they want to do this, and I'm like, oh, God. This is great, you know? So it kind of was bringing me out of, like, the sulking in myself and not knowing what I was going to do.
Yeah, it kind of, like, reminded you why you love this industry so much.
So it brought the spark back, and I was like, yes. And then once that spark was there, then all the rest, it just, again, I love cooking. Even when I wasn't cooking in a restaurant, I was cooking at home all the time. I was cooking for my parents. I was cooking for my family. And so I never stopped doing it. I just needed to get myself outside of, like, the mental state of a restaurant.
Okay, so you've moved on, clearly, past ramen noodles and macaroni and cheese.
Yes.
But tell me more about, like, what it is about being in the kitchen and preparing food that really just gives you so much peace and love and joy.
So cooking, to me, there's, like, it's so zenful when you're in the right environment. So, you know, a lot of people, they like the hustle and bustle, and they want to be like that team. When you're cooking with somebody, you feel like you're a part of a team. And that is your family. You spend a lot of hours with these people, so you have to like them. You cannot go in there and just be like, I'm not going to deal with this person. I'm not going to do this. So when you work in a kitchen, you have to feel like this unity. And, you know, the sounds, the smells, even like when you burn your hands, like the pain, it reminds you, it's like a shock to your system. And it kind of rejuvenates you on every service. It rejuvenates you on every ticket that comes through. Sometimes on, you know, a Sunday morning and it's brunch, you're like, I do not want to be making eggs right now. This is not motivating to me. But then, you know, you come back in and then you reflect on the day and you're like, actually, it was a beautiful day. We cooked beautiful food. We did beautiful cleanup. And we cook for beautiful people. And, you know, that's the thing is I love touching tables in my restaurants. So a lot of chefs don't like talking to people, really. They want to stay behind the line because they don't want to explain something, from my experience. But I love talking to people. I love it so much.
That does not surprise me one bit.
I love it so much. So every single night, I always touch tables. Every single night, I'm like, how is this? What do you think about this? What do you think we could do differently? You know, and kind of bring them more interactive into they're spending money and they want an experience. So I give them an experience. And, you know, I'll sit down with them, or, you know, the other night we had new people that just moved into the town, and we were closing the kitchen. And everything was, like, done, wiped down, all the stuff. And they had the food menu, and I was like, oh, is there anything? They're like, oh, we're just looking, you know. We just moved here. We know the kitchen's closed. And I was like, no. I was like, tell me what you want. I got you. And my whole kitchen staff was already gone at that point. All the stuff was off, and I did, like, a small plate of something just so they can taste it. just so they can experience that, you know? Like, I love doing stuff like that.
Wow.
And
What's it like watching people eat your food?
it's really, really rewarding.
I bet.
Like, there's nothing better than that. Like, my favorite saying is, like, I love the first bite. So, like, when I see, like, we have a nice scallop risotto on the menu. So when I plate it, I take a lot of pride in the plate up. It's aesthetically pleasing. The flavors are nice. And I'll, like, peek my head through the door. I'm like, oh, yeah, there she goes. She's about to eat it. She's about to take that bite. And then you can just see, like, the look and the expression. They're like, oh, yeah, this is good. And I'm like, woo, here we are. Let's go.
All right, as somebody who doesn't enjoy people watching me eat, I'm going to make sure that next time I go to your restaurant, I'm turning my back to the kitchen. I'll just know you staring at me.
I'm, like, looking like a creep. All right, the fork's coming out.
You're the chef. You've earned the right to creep out on us.
Yeah, right. I mean, I'm not just, like, hanging out, coming out of a dumpster, being like, yeah, what are you eating over there? Let me see that real quick.
Wow. So after all these years, you still love cooking. Now I'm curious to kind of hear from you what has been some of the things that you've done to help with your mental health. I know you talked about, you're interested in looking into therapy, but I mean, are you on any medication? Is there any kind of meditation practices or anything that you've now incorporated into your life to help you with your mental health?
So basically what I do, I take no form of medication. I am trying to find the best, whether it's online or interaction on Zoom, like whatever it may be for therapy, because I do see that, it's not going to do any harm. It's just going to do something positive. And so, that is in my thoughts. I try to go for a run every single morning. I kind of took out like some different foods I was eating, because in the restaurant, we don't really get a lot of time to eat. So when we do eat, it's like fried or like something quick, like a piece of steak, or maybe like the whole kitchen will split one burger.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So we don't get a lot of time to eat. So that kind of entails that you're not getting the proper nutrition. To me, being healthy and doing this stuff has a lot to do with your mind.
Absolutely.
And so, like I said, I try to go for a run every single morning. Last week, I got lost in the city of Philadelphia, and I have such anxiety about places I don't know, because I'm like, what if I get lost and my phone dies and no one will ever find me? So I always have like anxiety about that stuff, but I was like, you know what? I was like, screw this. I'm going down into the city, and I'm going to get lost on purpose. I'm not going to have my GPS. I'm going to put my phone in my backpack. I'm going to listen to music. And I did a 4-mile run in the city, and I had no idea where I was.
Wow.
I just took random roads. I was like, oh, this road looks cool. Oh, this road looks cool. Oh, this road looks cool. And I did a 4-mile run with like a 2-mile cool down. And I was like, oh, shit, where'd I park my car? And I was like, oh, my God. And then, like, anxiety started kicking in. And I was like, no. I was like, and then I'm going to take myself out to dinner, which I never do. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to get lost. I'm going to find some place, and I'm going to take myself out to dinner. That's exactly what I did. I came into, like, this. It wasn't, like, a super nice restaurant. It was a nice restaurant. But I came in sweaty as all heck in a sweatshirt and, like, joggers. And I'm just, like, drenched with sweat. And I was like, hey, let's go to a table. And they're like, oh, yeah, sure. And I sat upstairs by myself, enjoyed some nice confit duck legs. And then I had, like, a nice smoked Gouda mac and cheese and enjoyed a nice crisp beer. It was good. But it's something that I would normally have anxiety about. I think sometimes we need to, like, push ourselves outside to realize that, like, going for a walk and getting vitamin D into your skin, your body, your mind, smelling the air, just finding something nature, that always works for me. Like, I've hiked, like, 9 miles of the Appalachian Trail, just in one day, like, just random. We were like, you know what, let's do this. And it was so, like, refreshing, and I love doing stuff like that. So that's kind of, like, my natural remedy is, to kind of just be outside and be around the sun.
Oh, I love that. I mean, it's vital to our survival is getting outside and fitness and exercise, getting that sun. But confronting the thing that makes us anxious is also part of our survival, because the only way that we're going to grow as human beings is to get outside of our comfort zone. So you just taking that leap of faith and saying, you know what, I'm going to intentionally do the thing I'm scared of and get lost in this city that I have no idea where anything is. Like, that's beautiful. That's amazing. I think if more people do that, we'll have even bigger and better game changers in the world.
Yeah, and there'd be so much more clarity of the mind, and there'd be like a different, everybody has their own personal zen and what makes them feel this way and what they do. But I will always suggest being outside, always suggest, like, even if it's like, you sit on a patio and take yourself out to lunch, or, just something that, like, that keeps your mind distracted and away from yourself. Like, that's, like, what I've been finding. And, again, it's not perfect. Sometimes it hits heavier on other days, than the next. But, I try to keep my mind distracted as much as I can, because I do not want my mind to take over in that negative sense.
You really have to get comfortable with the uncomfortable in a lot of ways. So I'm kind of curious, after you kind of had this, moment of getting lost, feeling anxious, and then deciding, nope, I'm going to turn it into something good, go to a restaurant I probably never would have stopped at before. What was kind of your thoughts after that? You finally get back to the car once you find it, and what did you feel after that kind of accomplishment?
I felt very sore. My legs are like jello. So I had to sit in the car for a second and kind of regather. But I felt good. I felt just again a clarity. There was a sense of just it was pure. It was pure because there was no ill intentions to do it. It was just an attention. There's an attention to just do something you never did, and there was nothing negative in those moments, and it was like a serenity. So it all depends on like where you're. It was a really rough week last week for me, so I didn't do as much as I normally would. The week before it was an amazing week, and I did a lot of different things. So it just unfortunately, like, the disease sometimes can be selective when it wants to come out. And when you kind of have to fight it, and but after that day, it truly was an amazing feeling. I felt incredible about myself. I was like, man, I took this handsome stud on a date, himself, and I felt good about it. It was just like it was like a compliment to myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. I mean, the first thing that people need to know if they're on any sort of mental health journey, or health journey for that matter, it's that it's not just a steady incline to the top. It's got so many ups and downs and U-turns and loop-de-loops and stuff, and drops, like complete drops, exactly. And you beat yourself up thinking, but I was doing so good last week. Why is this week I'm in a funk? Nothing, maybe there was a trigger, but maybe there wasn't. And those are some of the hardest days for me, is when I'm feeling very overwhelmed by my emotions and I can't tell you why. There's really no reason for it. It's just the chemical imbalance in my brain is telling me that something is wrong, and I'm trying really hard to not let it consume me, but it's difficult. And so it's definitely this up and down journey. But I think the really cool thing about that night is that you have had how many nights since then? A bazillion nights, right?
Yep.
And yet, here we are on this podcast today, and that's the night that you remembered because you did something brave. And I think that's the beautiful thing about life, is that we never really know what memories are going to stick. However,
Agreed.
We can intentionally create memories that we know are going to last a lifetime by doing those things that make an impact in our lives, that often take us out of our comfort zones, because those are where the memories really do happen.
Exactly. And it's something that, if you do something so, if something's so repetitive and you don't take yourself out, then it just becomes just a part of your life. It's not like there's not like a big impact per se.
Yeah.
But when you take yourself out, it's just the norm. It's like when you randomly are just like, hey, I'm going to Six Flags today. You're like, oh, all right. Like, I normally wouldn't go to Six Flags, but this is going to be an awesome day. Roller coasters, cotton candy. This is going to be great. And that's like why like I feel like we remember things as like when we went to Disney as kids or when we went camping, because it was like out of the norm and it was like random out of our normal routines. That's where the memories stick.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I base it on, is like things that just like when we were kids are just random things that our parents did with us, or random things that our grandparents did. Like, oh, this becomes a memory. This is an impactful memory.
Yeah, and the more of those impactful, positive memories that we can make, the more we have to fall back on when we do get into those slumps. We can remember that, hey, life isn't as bad as we feel like it is or we think it is, because I remember this really good day that I had, and I know that I'm going to have another really good day in the future.
Exactly. I could not have said it better myself. That is nailed it right on the head.
Wow. Well, I'd love to ask kind of a final question, and that's, what advice would you have for anybody who is struggling with their mental health?
I mean, my advice, I will openly say that if anybody who listens to this podcast feel free to personally message me. I will always offer an extended ear and give any words of encouragement that I possibly can. So that's the first thing I want to say. The second is, it's something that with this disease, it is so important for us to talk to people and to let people in a little bit. It's not something that we should feel embarrassed about. Like, we didn't really choose this. It kind of chose us. And, we have to, as a community, we have to be there for one another because, sometimes we're in our community, we are stronger in packs than we are by ourselves. I have a wolf tattooed on me because I like to feel like I'm part of a pack. And the bigger your pack is, the stronger you feel. The stronger you feel, the easier you can get through these things, because you're going to be like, well, if my pack member did this, then I can do this. I have that power to do this. But like, we do have to lean on each other during these kind of moments, because sometimes we need that person to pull us out. And when we talk about it and we let people exposed to this disease, it's not like they're going to catch it. It's not contagious, but when we let them in, it's something that it's more beneficial to the disease that we have.
Absolutely. Mental health is not something any of us can do on our own. So, Chris, Thank you so much for offering your listening ears to people who might want somebody else to talk to. I think that's so amazing. And while we're on that topic, can you give me kind of like, what are your social media handles that people can find you on and connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have Instagram, and my Instagram name is PawkChef 9126. Pocket Chef, because I'm such a small statured man. So it only made sense for that name. And then my personal Facebook, which is Chris Mendonca. Like I said, anybody can feel free to reach out. But again, it's Pocket Chef 9126 for the Instagram, and then just my regular name for Facebook.
And I will put all of that in the description of this podcast episode. Chris, I cannot believe that our time is up. This has been one of the most joyful, life-giving conversations I have had in a long time. So thank you.
Oh my God, Katie, thank you so much for your time, and I'm super honored to be a part of it. Thank you for letting me share my story.
Thank you for listening to the Drawn Podcast, empowering women battling anxiety, depression, and other mental illnesses, where I believe we've been drawn together to create a life we love. You can find more amazing content at my website, KatieRochetco.com, or follow me on Instagram at The Drawn Collection.